Introducing the new party. We live stream every Tuesday and Thursday p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
After being marched to slave forts on the coast, shaved to prevent lice, and branded, they were loaded onto ships bound for the Americas. About 20% of them would never see land again. Most captains of the day were tight packers, cramming as many men as possible below deck. While the lack of sanitation caused many to die of disease, and others were thrown overboard for being sick or as discipline, the captains ensured their profits by cutting off slaves' ears as proof of purchase. Some captives took matters into their own hands. Many inland Africans had never seen whites before and thought them to be cannibals, constantly taking people away and returning for more. Afraid of being eaten, or just to avoid further suffering, they committed suicide or starved themselves, believing that in death their souls would return home. Those who survived were completely dehumanized, treated as mere cargo. Women and children were kept above deck and abused by the crew, while the men were made to perform dances in order to keep them exercised and curb rebellion. What happened to those Africans who reached the New World, and how the legacy of slavery still affects their descendants today, is fairly well known. But what is not often discussed is the effect that the Atlantic slave trade had on Africa's future. Not only did the continent lose tens of millions of its able-bodied population, but because most of the slaves taken were men, the long-term demographic effect was even greater. When the slave trade was finally outlawed in the Americas and Europe, the African kingdoms whose economies it had come to dominate collapsed, leaving them open to conquest and colonization. And the increased competition and influx of European weapons fueled warfare and instability that continues to this day. The Atlantic slave trade also contributed to the development of racist ideology. Most African slavery had no deeper reason than legal punishment or intertribal warfare, but the Europeans who preached a universal religion and who had long ago outlawed enslaving fellow Christians needed justification for a practice so obviously at odds with their ideals of equality. So they claimed that Africans were biologically inferior and destined to be slaves, making great efforts to justify this theory. Thus, slavery in Europe and the Americas acquired a racial basis, making it impossible for slaves and their future descendants to attain equal status in society. In all of these ways, the Atlantic slave trade was an injustice on a massive scale, whose impact has continued.
Party. Why I like the new party? Number one, it's a group of people that's on a panel. We all have differences, but we all basically still come together at the end of the day. The new party for me is about unity. The new party for me is about educating people to the truth, letting people know what's been going on in our country. With that being said, shout out to the new party, man. We're going to keep it going with y'all.
Welcome to the new party. I'm Nora Christine.
I'm Gray Mars.
I'm K-Dot.
And tonight on the new party, we are going to be talking about the true history of the African diaspora. Shouts out to everyone watching tonight. Thank you for watching us as we celebrate Black History Month. As Donald Trump and the Black elite for MAGA are celebrating up in the White House, we will be talking about the true African diaspora. And shouts out to my fan, RJ. He gave me some of the clips tonight. So if you guys ever have any ideas, feel free to reach out to us. So thank you, RJ. K-Dot, I saw you shaking your head. What's your thoughts?
On the Trump Black History Month celebration? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking me
go
about?
ahead. We could kick that off because I saw you shake
I
your
thought
head.
we were done doing that. The DEI kind of special things. I thought that wasn't a thing anymore. So why are we pandering now? It's okay to pander now? Okay.
Hey, Trump never said we was getting rid of Black History Month. And how can we when we still see the effects of slavery today? We had an interesting debate Tuesday night, Kate. Let me get your thoughts before we go into the clips. What's your thoughts on the issue with the 14th Amendment? Do you think it should apply today to immigrants or not, the birthright citizenship, those that anchor babies, so to say? Is it a talking point or is it a real issue?
It should. I don't think it should change. I know they don't like it. That the Republicans say that it's not fair that you can just come here, be born here, and be born a citizen. But that is America. When you come here, people immigrate here. People come across the border. They have a child here. You were born on U.S. soil. You are a U.S. citizen. You are afforded the rights and the civil liberties of an American. And like many of us here, I believe we're all descendants of chattel slavery. And those who came before us fought and died for that amendment and these rights that people are being afforded for. So if they want to make a change to the process, I guess when at a certain level below the constitutional level, fine, but changing what my ancestors fought and died for, I'm not okay with, especially with a party who doesn't necessarily agree with how Black people feel we should have certain things corrected throughout history.
Well, that's interesting you say that because Black people are mad about it being used for people from other country born here, and that's the counter argument. Gray, you're one of them. What is your thoughts? Give your counter on why you don't agree with that being applied to immigrants, children.
I think birthright citizenship. I understand the concept. But when you're saying like directly to slavery, what I was saying is that a lot of people from these foreign countries don't even like African Americans, but they're benefiting from something that African Americans have done for them. And like Kate I said, died, went through slavery and things like this. And then, you have a Black population that hasn't even received reparations or I feel like have been given the respect that they deserve for the building and the success of this country.
Yeah, and one thing we learned that night because the lovely Jenna was on. Shouts out to Jenna. If you guys aren't following her, please go check her out. She said no other countries have birthright citizenship, and my counter was no, that's not true. 34 have it unconstitutionally, and guess what? They all have in common. They all had chattel slavery. And we're going to learn about that tonight because an argument that I hear from African Americans that are foundationally from this country, no disrespect, is only African Americans had chattel slavery. And that is absolutely not true. The entire hemisphere, Caribbean, South America had chattel slavery. We're going to learn about that tonight. So shouts out to RJ for sending me the clips. The first clip that y'all saw, we played, talked about the transatlantic slave trade. The effects of it was horrible. It was disgusting. It was truly a genocide. 30 million people were affected by it. 30 million Africans were brought over here. And guess where the bulk of them went? Can you guys take a guess?
Brazil.
Brazil. You said Brazil. Where you say, K. Dot? Okay, you're muted. It's
I believe
okay.
it was Brazil, correct?
Correct. South America. So 10 times the amount that came to the United States of America went to the Caribbean and Brazil, South America. And that's a little known fact that people don't know. The smallest amount actually came to the United States, which is crazy to me because they what they did here was they did a form of breeding, so to say. They would have the slaves, they pick the big, strongest slaves and have them have sex with each other, which I think is disgusting. And these are the effects that we had today. Gray, what's your thoughts? Did you learn about that? And I'm going to play the clip talking about it now.
I've been to Brazil. I went to Brazil like 4 years ago, and I will say it is a different when you go to the demographics and what it does to society because you have Afro Latina, but I felt like it was more everybody's like Brazilian. So them having so many slaves did affect the population, and they felt like they had a racial utopia back in the 80s. I don't know if you have that clip. As far as genetics and them trying to create the perfect slave, for lack of a better term, I'm not surprised. Black people were seen as property, so they had no rights. So if you're trying to accomplish a task, Even with having a World War II, you do experimentation. It's been happening since the beginning of society.
Let's watch the clip now about the slave breeding, so to speak, what they did.
A common practice among slave owners in the U.S. and involves selectively breeding enslaved men and women for their physical strength and reproductive capabilities. Fact number 3. It was not uncommon for slave owners to force enslaved women to have sex with male slaves in order to produce children who could be then sold for profit. Fact number 4. Slave breeding was particularly common in the American South, where the plantation economy relied heavily on the labor of enslaved people. Fact number 5. The price of a slave in the U.S. could range from a few $100s to several $1,000s, depending on factors such as age, gender, physical strength, and skills. Fact number 6. The transatlantic slave trade, which brought millions of enslaved Africans to the Americas, was officially abolished in the U.S. in 1808, but the domestic slave trade continued until the end of the Civil War. Fact number 7. Enslaved people were legally considered property in the United States and had no legal rights or protections. Fact number 8. Slave marriages were not legally recognized in the United States, and enslaved people were often forcibly separated from their spouses and children. Fact number 9. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 required all citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves and imposed heavy penalties on those who aided fugitives. Fact number 10. The 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, was ratified in 1865 but did not grant full civil rights to African Americans who continued to face discrimination and violence for decades to come. The legacy of slavery and its aftermath continues to shape American society.
So yeah, guys, as we saw, it continues to shape American society. As I'm watching that, there's this stereotype that Black men don't stay in their families, they're not good fathers. And I will say, many of my friends are great fathers. So I do think that's a stereotype. Do we think that's an effect of slavery? Gray, what's your thoughts?
I'm not sure it was an effect of slavery. I don't know who my real father is. People in my family, they didn't have fathers. People in my neighborhood, they didn't have fathers. The Republican talking point
Wow.
is they blame the Section 8, which I'm completely against because I feel like that's what helps people survive. Culturally, I feel like, we don't get along. So we just don't end up lasting in relationships. I just put it like that. In modern times, do I feel like slavery still has an effect on that to this day? No, I
I
don't
do.
think so. Okay.
Played out, what's your thoughts? Why do you think that the Black love doesn't last nowadays? Do you think that's from slavery? Why do you think there's that stereotype of Black men
Yeah,
not being good fathers?
the stereotype is that's just media. Sprinkling in, that's just a white power structure. They're gonna put the negative narrative on Black men like they always have. The reason why we have that trope is the war on drugs. We know that, I was a 90s. I grew up born in the late 80s. I call myself a 90s baby. I grew up in the 90s, which was the tail end of what the so-called crack era. My father grew up in that era. He was, in and out of my life a little bit because he struggles with being caught up in the system, a young Black man in the world. Being a direct descendant of chattel slavery himself from Florida, growing up in the North. And then with
Really?
Black
Where in
people,
Florida?
oh my God, a blanket on the name.
Is it South Florida?
Clearwater, Florida.
That's where I
Oh,
live. That's
Yeah.
where I live.
That's where you from? Damn, we might be
Yeah,
family.
that's
Look at
It's
that.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah. But
Sorry, I
yeah,
just wanted
yeah,
to
that's
hear.
all good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They're deep in, I've been out there a couple of times, deep, countryside Florida. They got cows and stuff like that. My family, my dad's side of the family, that's where my grandfather's from. So, but he moved up here, met my grandmother who's from Jersey. But like I said, the reason why Black love doesn't last today is because, again, I think it's some of the the effects of slavery, the effects of Jim Crow, what it takes to be successful in America, to raise a family, the financial hardships, the everything that capitalism, everything that America is, and all of the access that Black people, men and women, have been locked out of, and behind the
Mhm.
eight ball. All that stuff puts a stressor on your relationship, man, and it's harder to last when we're just trying to be people at the same time. Forget being financially successful. You're trying to be emotionally successful and all those other things. And we can dive into that, and cultural differences as well, and cultural issues to also play a part, like Gray brought up. Was also a solid point. But I think the foundation of what America is really helps erode not the easier parts, but it really helps erode certain parts of what it means to be a family, to try and be a family in America today.
I think the effects for me still last when it comes to child rearing and like how you raise your kids, like, and like for me, like I feel like black mothers had to be so strong because their kids were being sold off, their husbands were being sold off. So I think sometimes there's a disconnect of affection. Like I can only speak for me because I have a black mother, right? And I think that is where the effects, I think, still last to this day from my experience. That would be where I would say the effects come in. And I think that if you're not nurturing, sometimes men don't like that. I'll be honest with you. Am I right in that? Like y'all like nurturers.
Can I bring up a statistic though?
Sure.
Black men are highly married statistically. Black women
Mm.
and Asian men are actually the least married group globally. So black men
Mhm.
are struggling to get married, but they are struggling to stay married to a black woman.
So I have a question. I have to address it. Autumn, we only have so much time tonight. Nora, how do you support Trump regarding the issue? This is my thing, and this is where I'm at. I realize it's both parties that have inept racism in it, and I believe the Democratic Party has it too. Maybe one night when K. Dot has his one-on-one debates, we can talk about it. I don't want to take up all night, but that's pretty much where I'm at. And for me, I just feel like God, family, country, and that's why I align with the Republicans. But now he's aligning himself with people like Elon, so I don't know. But that's why I made the decision that I made, and we can get into that offline. But to answer her, so this is a great discussion tonight, guys. The next clip that I'm going to get into talks about the impacts on Latin America, because many people don't realize, and this is the clip that RJ gave to me, is that the diaspora wasn't just the Americas, and a lot of people in Latin America don't say that they're Black, and we'll talk about that next.
On the history of slavery in the United States.
La diáspora afro-latina tiene sí ciertas particularidades que lo hace un poco diferente a la diáspora del sur de los Estados Unidos.
Yet, the African diaspora in Latin America is rarely mentioned or included in the dialogue.
Desgraciadamente debo decir que en África no conocemos la historia de los afrolatinos.
Te podría decir que el 80% de la población no sabe que hay gente de influencia africana en México.
I think there's widespread ignorance as to whether African Americans know about this history. No, I frequently give presentations on this, and I find that this is the first time that they've heard about it.
Over 12 million enslaved Africans were forcibly brought to Latin America, and an estimated 500,000 were brought to the United States over the span of 400 years. Why then is the African diaspora in Latin America not taught in educational institutions from elementary school to the university level?
Hay momentos en la historia peruana en que la historia como discurso se teje, pero ahí no están los afros.
Por ejemplo, en las escuelas, la mención de los africanos comienza desde que llegan como esclavizados. Y esto es bien importante que lo aclaremos. Digo esclavizados, no esclavos, porque ellos no eran esclavos. Ellos eran seres humanos libres que fueron esclavizados.
Aún no hay dentro de lo que es la enseñanza oficial un interés que nosotros necesitamos que sea desde arriba, ¿no? Desde las autoridades principales de nuestro país, para que se difunda, que los niños negros, que las niñas negras sepan su historia.
Many children and adults in Latin America do not know anything about Africa, buying into stereotypes, oftentimes unaware that it is a continent.
Todavía dentro de esa concepción de mundo, el niño no te piensa que África es un continente.
So I'm in the chat talking to Autumn real quick, and appreciate Autumn. Glad she gave me another chance. She goes, I'm just going to listen as a white woman from here on out. You guys, this is American history. I don't want white people to be quiet during this conversation, because this is the problem I feel we have, where white people feel like they can't contribute. And I don't like that. Like, this is our history, whether we like it or not. This is our history. But anyways, so what's interesting to me in that clip is I grew up in Miami, Florida, a melting pot, and there were a lot of Black Cubans, but they would say, I'm not a Moreno, or I'm not Black, I'm Cuban. And I know someone through someone that says they're not Black, but they're darker than me. And no shade, they have Black features. So K-Dot, as a biracial person, me and you struggle, I'm sure we get it on both sides. How do you feel when these people that are clearly even darker than us say they're not Black?
I love it when I talk to my Afro-Latinas and Latinos and they don't know their history and they hit me with the I know Black, Papi, I know Black. It's great. I love it because it gives me a chance to educate them, man. And it is important. Like the clip we were seeing, I grew up not knowing this history about how many slave Africans ended up in South America and Brazil in particular, and the Dominican Republic and everything, and all over the place, man. Colombia, you said, I'm sorry, you said Colombia. You said there were. No, you didn't say Colombia. I'm sorry, you didn't.
I said Cuba, where I came. Yeah, Cuba. And they're
just the African influence and the crossover between the two cultures. It just needs to be, more put into the education system. This is why we need these things. This history needs to be taught. Which again, I don't want to make this a political thing. But when we talk about who's teaching accurate history, we have this revisionist side with some Republicans wanting to whitewash and not talk about certain things, where these people come from. And that's doing a disservice to the entire world, because when you teach the history and you learn how much you have in common, it helps disabuse us of these made up social ideologies where we're all different in some ways rather than we're more similar in ways. So, yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they were taught as children. I think I have that clip where they were taught not to be with Black people, not to like Blacks. You don't have good hair. You don't have good lips. Like it was like a brainwashing almost. Gray, what's your thoughts and your experience? Because I know you grew up in kind of not a melting pot, and coming to Florida, you said it was a culture shock.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town called Valdosta, Georgia. And then when I got to high school, I moved to Clearwater, Florida, where Kate I was just talking about. It was complete culture shock, multi-diverse, South Florida, like completely different. But what I'll say about the education system is I didn't learn probably to my late 20s or early 30s that Africa was actually a part of like selling slaves. I always thought that it was the Roots movie, that Europeans came to the island and they went there and grabbed them and brought them on boats. I didn't know it was this 3-continent slave trade type of thing. But what I'll say about the Hispanic Afro-Latinos, I see RJ say that he's of Haitian descent. I used to hang out with some Dominicans every Friday. So if anybody know Dominicans, they party every Friday. And we were drinking, we would do a hookah one day, and I was just like, man, why does the Dominican Republic do Haiti so wrong? Like, y'all got all the vegetation, y'all got this, why don't y'all help out Haiti? And they were offended. They was like, how dare you say that? All the stuff you get here as an African American, you don't know like the history of like the wars that happened between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and people were essayed and all this stuff. So, I mean, I feel like people are more in tune with what's happened in present time or 20 years ago than something that happened 400 years ago. So it's hard for them to relate to the African heritage because they've never been there.
Yeah. And it's funny you talk about Haiti. I actually have a clip where it talks about how African Americans migrated to Haiti. Let's watch that and we can comment on it.
Merengue and breathtaking beaches. Yet how many people know that English is the native language of some Dominicans? In the Dominican Republic, there were two different migrations of blacks, West Indians and African Americans. After the Haitian Revolution in 1804, the Haitian government welcomed African Americans to come to the island to help rebuild their country. With the desire to escape a racist United States, African Americans from Philadelphia and other U.S. coastal cities migrated to Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
The Afro-Americans came from, they all left out from Philadelphia. Primer grupo fue de Haití, después a Santo Domingo, luego el grupo de Samaná, y otro grupo se fue para Puerto Plata.
In 1824, Haitian President Jean-Pierre Boyer financed a trip of North American blacks that wanted to live and work in Haiti. In all, 6,000 people reached the island of Hispaniola, and the African American culture brought to the Dominican Republic still remain in the area of Samaná.
Muchos de los juegos, los jóvenes están dejando de escallecer porque teníamos muchos juegos que usaban los afroamericanos y lo usábamos aquí cuando hacíamos bazar, cuando hacíamos.
So, after learning that, Gray, do you think that America should save Haiti? The fact that we technically could have Americans that were there. What's your thoughts? Does it change your view on Haiti in any way, or like, what do you think?
RJ, I have seen the movie Amistad. Can we save Haiti? Haitian people are proud people because they're the people that rebelled and were able to take the country back. I do feel like, similar to Hispanics, Black people have racism towards other cultures too. I feel like a lot of African Americans, especially here in Florida, have racism towards Haitians. So, do I think that that would be able to happen? I don't think so, especially with what's going on now with this administration. I think it would be a hard sell because I mean, where were they at? Ohio, where they said they was eating cats and dogs.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think there's no chance for Haiti right now.
Man,
Other than
no
Kodak
chance.
Black being cool with Trump, maybe he can tell them something. I don't know.
I'm going there in March. Pray for me.
You going
I'm
to
sure
Haiti?
I'll be okay. Yeah, I'll be at a nice resort. I'm going on a cruise.
Nice. Okay.
So, okay. So, like, my question is, like, K-Dot, were you shocked to learn that, or did you always knew about? So basically, another thing I learned, K-Dot, too, and I'll get your thoughts on it. A lot of Caribbean Africans built the Panama Canal. So a lot of them died literally building it. So now knowing that, do you feel we should have more of like a stake in the Panama Canal? Do you think that America should keep fighting for it? Or do you think the Caribbean should actually own that because their blood, sweat, and tears went into that?
Their blood, sweat, and tears went into that. America knew that when it was being built, they were going to use the indigenous people of the isle there and the coast there to build it, and they knew they were going to have difficulties building it, and safety regulations and deaths will occur. And shout out to my Haitian people, because of you guys is why a large chunk of America exists today with the Louisiana Purchase, because you guys revolted and kicked the French's ass and got your independence, and they had to sell, and they gave America its move to the west, easier than it would have been fighting the war against French, because who knows what would have happened in the history. So when you said the earlier question too, should we be helping Haiti out? Absolutely, because they are a big part of that history. And no, the one thing I didn't know is the organization between Haiti and the people of Philadelphia migrating down to work, and that how those two cultures intertwined and influenced each other. But as far as the Panama Canal stuff, no, they deserve their independence. They worked for it, they earned it, and America shouldn't be trying to pry anything out of anyone's hands.
This is the beautiful Kelly Corinne I told you about. Okay. She said, why do you guys say African, well, gray, but I'm sure K-Dot, what do you call Black people in this country? You call them Black or African American?
I say Black, African American. All the terms are interchangeable. I understand we're not Africans. I understand we're Americans. And we're descendants of that. But this is it's part of the culture, part of the history of this country that we do maybe need to revisit and kind of change up. But it's an interchangeable term. Black American. I know she said there are white European Americans. Yeah, they are technically, because they're not Native Americans. They're not the people of this land. So they are European Americans. But we don't say that because white privilege and them being this being the country that they instilled for themselves. They didn't have to deal with that. They put that label on us, and we took it, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I use those terms interchangeably.
Ray, what about you? Why do you use that term?
I like to answer it with another term. When you have Latinos for Trump, you have Latinos for Trump. When you have Muslims for Trump, you have Muslims for Trump. When you have blacks for Trump, you have blacks for Trump. When you have white European Americans,
why you gotta do that?
What do you call? But what do you call them? MAGA. And what does MAGA mean? Make America Great Again. I stole that from somebody on TikTok, but I wanted to use that term. Do you get what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I get where you're going with that. So to answer the question, Kelly also asked, were people paid? Yeah, they were paid for the work that they did, but I don't think they got paid like, when they lost their lives. No, like they just died, like literally, like they weren't paid for it. And a lot of things they weren't paid for. I mean, I don't know. The Panama Canal is one of those things where I know why Trump is fighting for it, but at the same time, should America really have a hand in that? I struggle with that because again, the blood, sweat, and tears, like RJ said, of my people, Jamaicans, they died. You know what I mean? And also, look, Autumn said I'm Italian, German, French, Canadian, American. I struggle with that too because a lot of white people they are proud. They say I'm Italian American. I'm German. I'm German American. I do hear them say that. Am I the only one that hears that? Tell me if I am.
I grew up in a place where we had the Italian festival, and that was Italian people celebrating their Italian pride. But they were all Americans. There weren't anybody from Italy there. They were all just descendants of Italian people who emigrated here. But no one gives them shit for it. Like you could still go to an Italian festival in New York. You know what I mean? So it's just like when black people try to do it and they talk about the history, we're supposed to, some reason, have a victim mentality because we're still living in the past for not forgetting our history. But I don't, is it a victim mentality? Do people who fly the Confederate flag, do they have a victim mentality? Yeah, you have a victim mentality because you're flying the flag of a loser who was also, the first terrorist, domestic terrorist. So I would say they're the ones with the victim mentality, but let me digress.
I mean, I gotta agree with you because like I watched this podcast one day and the person was like, "Oh, black people always bringing up slavery," and I'm like, because slavery still has impacts today. Whether you like, we have the damn 14th Amendment for it. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, so I agree with you. Anytime we bring up our history, it's a victim mentality. Why can't we just be proud of it, like you said? Gray, any thoughts before the next clip?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. So we're going to talk about how the labor force came about and why Africa was essentially weakened.
Noche negra en Bogotá, conciencia negra, futuro negro, trabajé como negro.
History books refer to Africans only as slaves. There is no mention that some Africans in their territories were kings and queens or men and women of great wisdom, nor does it mention that African kingdoms themselves participated in the slave trade, trading slaves from other kingdoms with European settlers. This story cannot be told without starting in Africa. Contrary to popular belief, Europeans did not enter into the depths of Africa to kidnap people and turn them into slaves. African kingdoms dominated the territories, enslaving small groups of people from other kingdoms. Kingdoms such as Ashanti, Dahomey, Oyo, Benin, and Congo were some of the most powerful. When trade with Europeans began, it benefited the African royals, and the elites grew more powerful. From this trade, an estimated 100 million Africans were taken from Africa and dispersed among every continent.
Salió lo mejor de África. África empezó muy mal. Empezó con una sangría humana.
The colonizers knew exactly which humans were of value and had their pick of the finest Africans.
entre un promedio de 15 a 45 años. Ese fue como el rango de edad de las personas que vinieron. Por eso hoy se dice que África es el continente más pobre del mundo, pero es porque su fuerza de trabajo fue extraída. En la medida en que se les extrae su fuerza de trabajo, solamente queda la niñez y la tercera edad, es decir, los abuelos.
Los traficantes de esclavos no se aventuraban a elegir a un hombre flaco ni a una mujer enferma. Tenían que ser jóvenes y robustos. Por tanto, se extrajo de sus hogares a lo mejor del pueblo africano.
The population of
Dang, like that is so sick, y'all. They took the strongest. So basically, Africa was cooked. They took the strongest men, the strongest women, and they brought them here, most of which died on that journey, or they tortured them. Gray, what's your thoughts learning about the strongest being taken from Africa?
I saw an African podcast where he talked about that Africa didn't have a prison system as well, and that a lot of the slaves were actually prisoners. So these possible
Wow.
people that committed crimes. And me, myself, I wonder, I mean, not this outrageous if that's why Black people are known for committing crimes because of our prisoners from our slaves. So I'll say something probably unpopular, but I think Black people should be more proud of their history. We don't have a time machine. If we went back and we didn't take the slaves, that everything was going to go perfect. But because we have the African diaspora, we have such a diverse background of African people from the Caribbean to America to even in the Middle East, because we've been pushed out in so many places. So we have so much influence in all of these countries.
And we should just feel proud because we were the best of the best. Like, like they took the best of the best. K-Dot, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Grace said. We do have a diverse background, and we need to be proud of that and everything that we've come from and everything that we are today. All of the hardships and stuff that we faced, even and all of the magic we've made out of it, and what the culture has become. There's not a thing on this planet that don't move and shake without our influence somehow, even after they've done the things that they did to us, selecting the strongest and purposely, breeding them like they did to make that. And, at some point, I've had this conversation before about how selective breeding came back to bite white people in the ass, because now you can't play basketball professionally.
That's true.
Yeah, you know what? And then we dominate in other ways as well. We're far from, not being educated. We're far from, not being able to become lawyers and doctors and things of that nature. It's just once we get a chance, when we get the same shot and everything's equal and on the same playing field, we're just as good as anybody, and we excel. So yeah, I just, again, to recap, I just agree with what Grace said.
Yes, RJ, I did hear about the conquest of Spain. We might talk about, well, we're going to get into that about my Moroccan history next week when we talk about the Nation of Islam. But okay, so the next clip that we're going to do, y'all, I want to talk about chattel slavery, because some people think that it only affected the United States of America, but all of the Caribbean and Brazil it affected, or South America it affected as well. Let's watch this clip.
Around the turn of the century, many die from disease and overwork in the scalding, injurious labor of sugar production, and this industry is maintained by heinous violence. One pro-slavery writer notes, for crimes of lesser nature, castration or chopping off half of the foot with an axe. For negligence, they are usually whipped by the overseer. After they are whipped till they are raw, some put on their skins pepper and salt. Rebellion incurs the punishment of being burned alive slowly. And yet it is known by all that in the mountains there live those whose very existence defies this order. Runaways and the survivors of frequent slave rebellions have often joined them or formed their own bands in the wilderness. And on occasion, often in the quiet hours of the night, the Maroons return to the plantations. They torch the estates, kill the slaveholders, plunder weapons and supplies, and liberate many of the enslaved into their ranks. For in the Blue Mountains lies a place called Nanny Town, home to hundreds of Maroons. Elements of the traditions and tongues of the mother continent are maintained here in a kind of diasporic West African village. Women plant yams and plantains, and men hunt wild hogs, and their children are born free. The leaders and warriors answer to the spiritual counsel and wisdom of a Maroon elder called Nanny. Her town, together with outlying Maroon villages, constitute the Windward Band of Maroons. In the west are the Leeward Maroons, under the stern leadership of a man called Cudjoe. Many Maroons are from the Akan-speaking region of the Gold Coast, first taken captive and sold during wars against rival African coastal powers. Thus, the Maroons are well acquainted with war. They traverse the Jamaican hills with signaling horns, brandishing spears or stolen guns and swords. When British planters expand around the northeast coast in 1722, the Maroons strike. Plantations are burned and deserted. Enslaved Africans are inspired to rebel or run away. Maroon raids continue for years with hardly any retaliation. The British Crown sends regiments of professional soldiers in 1730. But the militia and military alike must face the mountains, where they flounder down false trails into traps, only to be ambushed by Maroons who vanish again into the woods. Maroon warfare, slave rebellions, and a correspondingly torpid economy are bleeding the white population, already around 10 enslaved people to every 1 white person. At an emergency meeting of the legislature, the governor warns, "There never was a point of time which more required your attention to the safety of this island than at present."
So, and next time somebody tells y'all that slaves did not fight back, it happened in America, yes, but Jamaica and Haiti is where it really happened, y'all. So much so, they pushed the British to outrule slavery. So shouts out to my Jamaican people, shouts out to us holding back like you saw, but we were definitely affected by chattel slavery. It was harsh, it was cruel, it was evil. They did the same thing just in a different location. Gray, did you always know that chattel slavery affected the entire Caribbean, or did you just think it was a North American thing?
No, I saw that when I did my own research, how vast slavery was around the world. So I was aware of that. I didn't dig into Jamaica specifically. I did hear about the Haitian revolt, but me watching that reminded me of actually Fidel Castro. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Fidel Castro was son of a rich guy, but he was from the maid was his mother, and he slept with the Haitians in like the workers, and so that's why he grew up around the Haitians, and that's what made them do a revolution in Cuba. That's what that reminded me of.
Wow. K-Dot, did you know about the rich history of Jamaica? Like, what's your thoughts about the revolting?
It's amazing, people fight for their freedom. I was not, too educated on the topic. It's something I started learning more about when I went to Jamaica for the first time a few years back, and talked to some of the people that were there. Went to some local places, and some people who happen to be like local historians talked about their influence, and like how 75% of like the black people there are supposed to be descendants of like the West Atlantic or like the North Atlantic slave trade or whatever it would actually be named. I apologize if I got that wrong, but that was new to me. So a few years ago I started hearing about this and talking to people about it. They have this, a similar story and fighting for their independence, and even today, which I think is awful in France. And the British owe Jamaica money, because once you fight for your rebellion, you do that and you fight for your freedom, they tax you. Like Haiti is still paying tax today to France for gaining their own freedom, which is absurd, and what is one of the reasons why they have such a hard time governing themselves and putting money into building an economy, is because they're paying for a war that was put upon them that they just so happened to win. Because if France was still in control, or the British were still in control of Jamaica, there'd be no tax for them to pay back. You know what I mean? They'd happily still be stealing resources and people. So
And that's why the land is so barren too. What they did to them was awful. They had to pay a certain money by a certain time. So they had to chop down all the trees. And when they did that, they ruined their land. So that's why their land is terrible. They can't build anything. They can't grow any crops because the land is the soil is destroyed.
Yeah, and I think that was Napoleon. Like Napoleon had too many wars to fight or something, so he just went out and just let Haiti get taken. Yeah.
See, it's people like Dean. We understand that people sold other people into slavery. We get that. It's about what they did to the lands afterward, what they did to the people afterward. Everyone has slavery, but Jim Crow, the effects of slavery, the segregation, forcing a country that's already in a third world status and full of people who aren't originally from that land, the ethnic cleansing that was created behind the slave trade, all have factor into today. Excuse me, all factor into today why people struggle across several continents to gain their independence and uplift their communities. Everyone in it was the slave trade is a popular thing from back in the day, but it had an even more barbaric cost than we understood. And if we're all Americans and we're all even now, we're all equal underneath the Constitution, like it says, we should be correcting the problems that have a direct effect on communities today from the past, and that doesn't create division. I don't understand how you feel like that creates division. It's not like we're saying, oh, white people bad. Like, no, we're saying, listen, this was a
No,
horrible thing that
system
happened.
bad.
Yeah, system bad. The system is bad.
Because let's keep it a buck, y'all. Most white people didn't benefit from slavery. It was like winning the lottery to have a slave. So like that's the reality. Most white people did not benefit from
Most white
slavery.
people did benefit from slavery. That's not true. They may not have had slaves.
No,
they may not have owned slaves.
They did not.
Oh, sorry. So when slaves did the crops and picked this and did that, and other people who didn't have slaves went and bought the crops and profited from the products that black people weren't being paid, because now those things are cheaper. So let's say if you're
that's true.
But
they didn't own it. They didn't own it. It was only like 5% or 10%. It was like a small percentage. And
I'll give you that, but they all benefited.
Oh Lord. Gray, what's your thoughts on but we're not African? Why do you think there's such a disconnect with because like in Jamaica, like we don't feel like that. So like why do you think there's such a disconnect with African Americans with being African?
Is that 85 Slim?
I don't think so. No, that's not him.
Okay. I think Black MAGA Republicans are trying to be more intertwined with white America. So they feel like they got to drop that African off and just say that I'm American, and then that's gonna get them in the club. Like, okay, we're just American, so now we're a part of the society. That's what I think they're trying to
do. Okay, but do you feel any connection to Africa? It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious.
No, not in that way. I don't identify with African culture. I mean, I'm not one of these people that's going to be like, I don't know.
Get your citizenship.
But I'm also not going to be somebody that puts on a dashiki and, I'm walking around saying, my brother. So, I mean, I'm just being real. So, I mean, I'm pretty Americanized, to be honest.
How about you, K-Dot? What you think?
About being connected to African culture or calling myself African?
Yeah, about being connected to African culture.
I mean, I can be connected in the way of like historically.
History.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? And it'd be nice to know where my, the lineage goes back to. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, that tie has been severed due to things outside of historic control. And, I'm okay with saying I'm a descendant of chattel slavery. I'm a Black American. We from that pain and traumatic situation, we cut out our own culture, and a lot of it is rooted in African things, and new things that new people we came across here. So it's cool to know. It'd be great to learn, but I don't know if I'll ever be like, yeah, if my dad's Nigerian or where, Congolese or whatever, the roots may go back to. I don't know. I'm not.
You ever done your ancestry?
Huh?
You ever did your ancestry?
not all the way back to there. It's been hard to track. But I can
No,
do
your
my DNA.
DNA.
Yeah, I could. I
Yeah,
should
that's
do.
what
I
I
want to
mean.
do my DNA, but then
You should do it.
yeah, maybe I'll check it out and
I
see
was
what.
shocked to see what I had, y'all, because I was like, everybody always made fun of me. They're like, "Oh, you're white," blah blah blah. But when I did my DNA, I felt so proud because like I was 30% Nigerian. I was shocked by that, and then like I would say like another 15% like random African things, and then 30% North African. Obviously, I knew about that. So I was just like really shocked because I'm like, well, damn, why am I so light? But you should do it. It really was like eye opening. I thought I had more British in me, but it was only like 15%. Because like that's what we were told because I'm half Jamaican.
I did the ancestry one, and it
Huh?
shows you. I did the ancestry one, and it shows you where the
Mhm.
slave ship actually went and where you came in with. I was more European than and I was shocked by that. And it shows you
And
people
most
you connected to.
That's why I said to do it because most black people when they do it, their mind is blown because they have a lot of European in them.
I'm mostly
And so that's
Nigerian
why
too. I
huh?
just say mostly Nigerian. I'm mostly Nigerian too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Last clip of the night. We're gonna segue into like not really getting into it too much, but let's watch this clip about the economic impact on the Caribbean and around the world.
Portugal and Holland pioneered this slave route. Britain made a national fortune from it. Africa, nothing. Now, 15 Caribbean states, including Jamaica, have launched the first united campaign for reparations from Britain, France and Holland. They have suggested compensation equal to the sum offered to slave owners in the 1830s, £2 billion. They also want an apology.
Don't blush.
Recognition of the historic atrocity.
They hid in caves. My great-grandmother was born in a cave to make sure that she was not born as a slave. And that is what Britain perpetuated.
But the British government has refused to give either. David Cameron's first official visit to Jamaica has amplified calls on Britain to agree to reparations. Some argue that if Britain did pay, it wouldn't be the elite footing the bill but the tax-paying working classes. Others have said this was 200 years ago, it's in the past, why should I pay now? In Jamaica, slavery was followed with a century of colonialism.
Most of the land is still in the hands of Europeans.
When the Brits left in 1962, 80% of the population were functionally illiterate. Male literacy remains 4 points below the global average. 19% of the country live in poverty. When historic crimes have generational victims, who should pay?
So this goes into the never-ending debate on reparations. Again, there's a renewed sense of reparations now in our country because your Democrats are now trying to point the finger and say it's never going to happen under Trump, but it never happened under them. So the point where I'm getting at with this is who should pay reparations if we let's pretend if we were to get reparations, should Britain also be cutting that check? In my opinion, I don't think it should all fall on America. And that is honestly the biggest argument for me, the counter argument to it. Who should pay? Gray, who should pay?
I didn't shoot the sheriff, but I shot the deputy. I was thinking about Bob Marley listening to that. Britain should probably pay Jamaica something. I know they were up under the Queen and the UK owned all this stuff.
No, I'm talking about America. Who should pay for America?
America, we should get the 40 acres and a mule to some extent. I mean,
But who should pay it? The United States or Britain too, or just the United States?
All of them. Every single one of them. If they got paid off us, we getting paid off them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what somebody just said in the comments too. All of them.
All of them. I mean, but see, people like, oh, we got to delineate and separate. I think this is a big issue. I think Brazil, I think there's strength in numbers, and that's my point. If everybody united for it, they would have to pay. I'm sorry, because like they owe it to all of us. Like that's the reality.
Yeah.
And that way, it wouldn't have to be how are we going to know who's African? You do the DNA, you see it.
You
Like
see the comment right there.
whites will say they are black also. Yo, there are some white people that have a lot of black in them though. Like, so how would that work?
That's why I said reparations doesn't need to be a check. It doesn't have to be a check. You know, or maybe we, you know, those of us who happen to be direct descendants of slavery and things haven't been washed out completely of the gene pool. I mean, then you put a race on it, and that's technically illegal. So that's why you can't go down that route. I say infrastructure, a rising tide. You know what they say, rising tide rises all ships or raises all ships. And you know, there's poorly educated white people and Hispanic people and all types of people in urban communities, and they'll come up as well. It is what it is. Even if you cut a check to a bunch of black people and you did it by who's African and who has race you could trace back, that's still money you're going to put into the economy and into the neighborhood anyway. So people are still going to feel that effect. I think there's a happy medium, but like you said, all of them have to pay. If you built your infrastructure using slavery and your family and your country is thriving today because of what you stole and who you stole, it's time to make it right.
Adam said Trump and Musk.
They got it. Cut the check.
Hey, we just recovered how many billions back? Like, let's go.
Listen, right. They're gonna give Doge reparations.
Yo, they claim there's supposed to be some sort of reparations check.
Ain't no.
Do I believe? Let me be honest with you. Do I think it's gonna be like literally they came like $700 a person is what they said it breaks down to. I think it's gonna be like $200 to $500 because you remember Bush. Do y'all remember when Bush sent that check to your parents? Do y'all remember that check?
Before my time. Nah, I've heard that.
I remember. Yeah, there was a check that came because I remember my mom was like, "Yeah, I can buy you shoes now," and she got a check. It was like $300 back in the day. It was like a stimulus. I don't remember for y'all. Can let me know in the chat if you know about it. But all right, y'all. Let's do our closing thoughts. Gray, I'll let you go first. What's your thoughts on our show tonight, and any closing thoughts?
Happy Black History Month. I feel like these conversations are important because a lot of stuff I learned, and like I said before, like in school, I didn't learn a lot of stuff about African Black history, and I'm a big history buff. So do your own research. In this generation, y'all have YouTube. You can just easily go look something up on the internet, and you can learn about your history. So learn about your history. If you're into it, you have the resources.
See, y'all, I think I'm the youngest one on this call. Why do I know this and not y'all? Anyways, K-Dot, what's your closing thoughts?
Yeah. Support reparations. Know your history. Don't let them whitewash it and use American exceptionalism to override what was done as and you know, because as any good nation is only going to go as far as the true history they teach. If you start whitewashing things and start covering things up, we'll forget who we were, what we were, and we're doomed to repeat history. You know what I mean? And with that being said, make sure you're subscribed to the new parties, YouTube, TikTok. I'm going live after this on TikTok myself at dem_K-Dot, DEM_K-Dot. I'll also be live streaming that on YouTube as well at Democratic.
What's the topic?
Topic tonight, we're going to be going over, you know, just the political things. Doge, you know, them putting out fraud paperwork on how much they're saving. Trump and his, you know, virtue signaling executive orders that mean nothing. Things of that nature. You know, just talking about things that are going on, been going on. Maybe some more random topics where people want to, you know, challenge me on. So if you feel like you could challenge me, you can take down the king. I'll be live in about 30 minutes. So come on over.
So My closing thoughts is this was a great show. Thank you so much to K Dot and his fans for supporting us. We really appreciate the partnership with K Dot. Please go over there and follow him. Any MAGA, please go up there. I might go up one day. I think I'm gonna do the one when he does the one-on-one. I'll go talk to K Dot. I can't. It's not for the. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart over there. But my closing thoughts is this. Autumn, thank you so much for taking the time and watching this as a white American in this country. I really appreciate you. And I'm going to shout out to Autumn. And I'm going to say this. This is American history, you guys. We really need to stop looking at this as, oh, who cares? It's just slavery. No, unfortunately, we still are seeing the effects of slavery today. And it's an uncomfortable reality, but it is a reality. We still are seeing it. This country was built on the backs of Africans. The Panama Canal was built on the backs of Africans, in particular, Caribbean, Jamaican people. So with that being said, be appreciative. Don't look down on Black people. Don't say, oh, who cares? Who cares if they want reparations? Oh, that's so long ago. Take the time to learn, understand, do your research. Like Grace said, you got Google, you got YouTube. Take the time to look. Also, next week, we are going to be doing our final episode of the series for Black History Month. We will be talking about the prison pipeline system, unfortunately, in this country, and how some Black men have then gone on, or Black Americans, I should say, that unfortunately went to prison and found the Nation of Islam in their hearts, because the following day, it is the start of Ramadan. So we're going to do an education on that. It is important to understand why Black people feel in this country that the justice system is unfair. And we're going to break it down so we can educate you on it, because it is part of Black history, unfortunately, in this country. Also, make sure you guys are subscribing to us on X, TikTok, as you can see below. We will be live streaming every Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Monday and Wednesday is the Man Show, or the Man Cave, excuse me. Tuesday and Thursday is the New Party. So if you guys like what you're seeing, please give us a follow on YouTube, X. So thank you to everyone watching. Great. Anything else you want to add?
No. Thank you for everybody for watching. Please hit that bell, subscribe. And like we always said on a New Party,
hit the like button, hit the like button, hit the like button. We got 50 people on. Everybody in TikTok, X, YouTube, please hit the like button. That's the last thing, because I forgot to remind people.
Always vote.
Always vote. God bless everyone.
Have a good night.
Introducing the New Party. We live stream every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.